The Fisherman and His Wife. Once upon a time, there was a poor fisherman who lived with his wife in a very humble little pigsty by the sea. The house was small, dark, and dirty, and they had very little to live on. The fisherman had to fish all day long to catch enough food for them. He was a kind-hearted man, but his wife, Ilsebil, was very unhappy with their life. One bright and sunny day, the fisherman went out to the shore as usual. He sat down on the soft sand, casting his line into the sparkling blue sea. He gazed at the shimmering water, waiting patiently for a catch. After some time, he felt a sudden tug on his fishing line. Surprised, he began to reel it in. To his amazement, he pulled up a large, shimmering fish. But this was no ordinary fish. As soon as the fisherman had it out of the water, the fish spoke to him in a gentle, yet desperate voice, saying, "Oh, please, kind fisherman, let me go. I am not really a fish, but an enchanted prince. If you set me free, I will reward you in some way." The fisherman was shocked. He had never heard a fish speak before, but he was a simple man and did not trust magical creatures. What a strange thing to hear, he thought. "You may talk, but you're still just a fish to me," he shrugged and said to the fish. "Oh, never mind your words. I don't want to keep a talking fish. You are free to go." With a splash, the fish darted away into the deep blue water, disappearing from sight. The fisherman, though puzzled, returned home to his wife and told her about the strange encounter. As he entered their pigsty, he said to his wife, "You won't believe what happened today. I caught a huge fish, and when I pulled it in, it spoke to me. It said it was an enchanted prince and asked me to let it go, and so I did." His wife, Ilsebil, was not pleased with this. She crossed her arms and frowned. "You fool! Why didn't you ask it for something? Look at where we live, in this nasty, dirty pigsty. You should have asked for something better. Go back and tell the fish we need a cozy little house to live in." The fisherman hesitated. "But wife, we have enough. Why must we ask for more? A pigsty may be humble, but it keeps us safe." Ilsebil would not hear of it. "I can't live like this any longer. Please, go to the fish and ask for a nice cottage." Reluctantly, the fisherman agreed. He set off back to the shore, feeling uneasy. The sea was calm, but it looked somewhat dull, yellowish and green. The fisherman stood at the water's edge, feeling awkward, and called out in his simple way, "Ho, fish of the sea, hearken to me. My wife Ilsebil wants a cozy little house. Please grant her wish." Immediately, the fish appeared in the water, swimming towards him. "What does she want now?" it asked. The fisherman replied, "My wife wants a nice little house. As we cannot live in this pigsty anymore." The fish nodded and said, "Go home. She is already in the house you asked for." The fisherman turned around and walked back home. When he arrived, he was surprised to see his wife standing in front of a lovely little cottage, much better than their old pigsty. Their cottage had white walls, a neat roof, and windows that let in plenty of sunlight. It was surrounded by a pretty garden with flowers, fruit trees, and a small pond with ducks swimming in it. His wife greeted him with a smile. "Come in, come in. Isn't this so much better than the pigsties?" She led him inside, where there was a warm, comfortable living room, a nice bed, and a tidy kitchen. Behind the cottage, they had a little garden full of vegetables and herbs. The fisherman looked around, feeling thankful but a little uneasy. "Well," he said, "this is much better than before. Perhaps we will live happily here now." Ilsebil, however, was not satisfied. She looked around and sighed. "This house is fine, but it's far too small for us. The garden is too tiny, and the courtyard doesn't have enough space. I want a stone castle. Go back to the fish and ask for that. The fisherman was shocked. A castle? Wife? Do you really think we need something so grand? Of course. I want to live in a castle, and I won't rest until we do. Go back to the fish and tell it what I want. The fisherman was very worried, but he did as his wife asked. He went back to the sea. This time, the sea looked darker, almost gloomy. The sky was overcast, and there was a slight breeze that made him shiver. Still, he stood at the shore and called out in his usual way, "Oh, fish of the sea, listen to me. My wife Ilsebil wants a grand stone castle. Please grant her wish." The fish appeared quickly and asked, "What does she want now?" "She wants a stone castle," said the fisherman, feeling embarrassed. "Go home," said the fish. "She is already in the castle." The fisherman returned home and found that his wife was indeed standing in front of a magnificent stone castle. It was tall and strong, with towering walls and many windows. Inside, the rooms were large, with chandeliers hanging from the ceiling and golden furniture. The garden was much bigger, with blooming flowers and rows of fruit trees. The courtyard was full of ducks, chickens, and other animals, and servants were running about, taking care of everything. His wife smiled proudly. "See, this is what I wanted. Isn't it magnificent?" The fisherman, though impressed, could not shake the feeling that things were moving too quickly. "Well, it's certainly grand," he said. "But do you think we should stop here?" Ilsebil frowned. "I am happy with the castle, but I think I should be the king. Go back to the fish and ask for a kingdom. I want to be king of everything." The fisherman was horrified. "A king, wife? But we are already very fortunate. You do not need more than this." His wife insisted, and the fisherman reluctantly went to the sea again. This time, the sea was darker still, with heavy clouds swirling above, and the waves crashing violently against the shore. He called out as he had before, "Oh, fish of the sea, listen to me. My wife Ilsebil wants to be king. Please grant her wish." "What does she want now?" the fish asked, its voice calm but weary. "She wants to be king," said the fisherman, feeling anxious. "Go home," said the fish. "She is already king." The fisherman returned home, and when he arrived, he found his wife sitting on a golden throne, wearing a beautiful crown. She was surrounded by servants and soldiers, and nobles from all over the land bowed before her. She smiled proudly, enjoying her new power. "Well, wife," the fisherman said, "are you happy now that you are king?" "I am king, yes," she said, "but I want to be emperor now. Go to the fish and ask for that." The fisherman was upset. "But wife, being king is already such a high position. Why do you need to be emperor?" "I will not stop until I am emperor," she said. "Go and ask the fish for what I want." With a heavy heart, the fisherman returned to the sea once more. This time, the sea was wild, lightning flashed, and thunder rumbled. The fisherman was afraid, but he gathered his courage and called out to the fish, "Oh, fish of the sea, listen to me. My wife Ilsebil wants to be emperor. Please grant her wish." "What does she want now?" the fish asked, sounding weary. "She wants to be emperor," said the fisherman. "Go home," the fish replied. "She is already emperor." When the fisherman returned home, he found his wife sitting on an enormous golden throne, surrounded by an even larger court. She wore many crowns, and her servants and attendants were more numerous than ever. Her throne room was filled with riches, and she was the ruler of all. She smiled at her husband and said, "Yes, I am emperor. But I think I should be pope now. Go back to the fish and ask for that." The fisherman, exhausted from all this, replied, "But wife, there can only be one pope. The fish cannot make you pope." But his wife was determined. "If the fish can make me emperor, surely it can make me pope. Go now and ask." The fisherman went to the sea once more. This time, the sea was a chaotic mess of crashing waves, howling winds, and dark clouds. He was terrified, but still he called out in his trembling voice, "O fish of the sea, listen to me. My wife Ilzabil wants to be pope. Please grant her wish." "What does she want now?" the fish asked, sounding very tired. "She wants to be pope," said the fisherman, shaking with fear. "Fear, go home," said the fish, in a voice that now sounded very stern. "She is pope already." The fisherman turned around, and when he returned home, he saw a sight that shook him to his core. His wife, Ilzabil, was sitting on a throne that seemed to reach up to the sky, taller than any building he had ever seen. It was made of pure gold, adorned with jewels, and surrounded by hundreds of attendants and courtiers. 3 large crowns rested upon her head, one on top of the other, each one more magnificent than the last. The entire room was illuminated by enormous chandeliers, and all around her, the most powerful people in the world were bowing in reverence. The fisherman approached cautiously, his heart heavy. "Wife," he said softly, "are you truly pope now?" "Yes," she replied, looking down at him from her lofty position with a sense of complete satisfaction. "I am pope, and now I shall rule over everything in the world. I will control the sun and the moon. No one else shall rise above me." The fisherman was horrified. He looked at the sky and saw the sun beginning to rise, casting a warm golden light over the land. It was a beautiful sight, but to his wife, it was an affront to her power. "Wife," he said, trembling, "are you not satisfied now? What more could you possibly want? The sun and the moon are beyond anyone's control." But Ilzabil was furious. "I cannot bear it. The sun and moon rise without my permission, and I cannot accept it. I must be the ruler of them, too. Go to the fish at once, and tell him that I must be lord of the sun and moon. I will not rest until I have everything." The fisherman, who had been hoping his wife might finally be content, felt his heart sink. He had seen how far things had gone, and he feared the consequences of asking the fish for yet another impossible request. But he was powerless against her anger, and he knew that if he didn't do as she commanded, she would only become more upset. So, with great reluctance, he made his way to the shore for the final time. The sea was an unrecognizable mass of dark, swirling waves. The wind howled as if it were in pain, and the clouds above were thick and black, as if the heavens themselves were in turmoil. The fisherman stood at the edge of the water, shaking with fear. He called out, his voice trembling, "O fish of the sea, listen to me. My wife Ilzabil wants to be lord of the sun and moon. Please grant her this final wish." The fish's voice came from the depths of the sea, now dark and thunderous. "What does she want now?" it asked, its tone tired and impatient. "My wife wants to control the sun and the moon," said the fisherman, almost apologetically. The fish replied, its voice now deep and gray. "Go home, fisherman. She is lord of the sun and moon already." With trembling hands, the fisherman turned and began walking back home, dreading what he would find. As he neared his house, he could see the sky above him growing darker. The storm clouds were swirling violently, and the wind seemed to scream in fury. His heart sank when he saw the familiar sight of their old pigsty. It stood in front of him, just as it had been before, dirty, run down, and neglected. He walked inside, feeling the weight of the years of wishes and greed that had led to this moment. His wife, Ilsabil, was sitting inside the same small, dark house, her expression cold and empty. There were no crowns on her head, no servants waiting on her, no grand thrones or riches. Everything was just as it had been before they ever wished for more. Ilsabil, now just as miserable as she had been when they first lived in the pigsty, turned to him and said, "What is this? This is not what I wanted. What happened? Why am I back here?" The fisherman did not have an answer. He simply stood silently, the storm outside howling and the memory of their wishes fading into the background. The dreams of grandeur that had once consumed them both now seemed utterly foolish. And there, in their humble pigsty, they realized that their endless desires for power and wealth had led them to nothing but emptiness. They lived there for the rest of their days, no longer with the hope of gaining more, but instead with the quiet understanding that true happiness is found not in endless wishes, but in contentment with what you have. And so they stayed in the pigsty, a place they had once thought too small and humble, but now a reminder that greed and ambition often lead to nothing but loss. And that, dear reader, is the end of their story, where they are left with nothing but the simple life they had once taken for granted.